What's going down, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Commander RestlessCorpse. We're back here with Elite Dangerous, and as you can see, the servers will be coming down in 60 minutes. So, whatever I had planned for this video tonight is going to be pushed to the side, and we are just going to explore. Now, I don't necessarily have really anything to talk about, so we're just gonna, because I was planning on like doing some jumps and whatnot, and you know, thinking about things and scouring Reddit and whatnot. I looked through Reddit, didn't find anything interesting other than, like, you know, people talking about killing each other and blah blah blah. But seeing that kind of put me in the holy shit, I need to do this mode. So we're gonna try and find something awesome within the confines of the time of this video. So let's see what we've got going on here. I do not see anything awesome, so we are moving on as soon as I'm done scanning this guy. But 76 episodes. Now, I did look through the rest of my, you know, other series and whatnot, and at 76 episodes, even at 75, this is the longest series that I've done. My previous longest series was Assassin's Creed 4 at 70 episodes. But once again, when I recorded that, I was doing 2 episodes a day, only because, you know, it was new for me to do a really long series, and I didn't... The thought of people watching a series for 70 consecutive days, like, kind of, like, was weird to me, so I decided to do 2 at a time. Now, I also, in my haste, decided to start this super quick and did not set up a timer, so there we go! Alright, once again, we're hoping to find something at least awesome, or, you know, passing interest, I guess. But something that did happen today is the old ARC crew, who previously were the Sandbox Survivors, are now the Insomniacs. We've rebranded, and we recorded our first episode today. It was pretty damn awesome. It's going to be going out on Friday, I believe. Friday, I usually put my ARC episodes out at around 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So we did something fun for the first episode of the new series, and hopefully we're going to be having fun with that. Now, we've decided that we're actually going to take ARC videos or at least our videos in a different direction. We're going to be doing a lot of like group stuff, creating game modes and things like that. It's going to be pretty cool. If you like ARC, then I urge you to check it out. The first episode will be up on Friday. It's going to be relatively short because we had an idea in mind, and the idea didn't really last as long as we thought it was. It was actually kind of a massacre, which is pretty funny. But if you like ARC, again, I urge you to check it out. In any case, I have a course set, 16 jumps, and this course at the end, if I actually make it before that 60 minutes is up, this course will get me down to the galactic plane and will be good to go down to Sagittarius easily. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it here, guys, and I'll let you guys know if I find anything awesome. So a few videos ago, one of you asked me if I read books. Now, I'm going to assume that he was just curious whether or not I actually am able to find time to read the books, and not, you know, am I one of those people that actually likes to read books. Yeah, I read, or at least I used to, a lot. Now, unfortunately, like nowadays, I don't really have a whole lot of time to read because I do, you know, I do these daily videos, I work a lot, and I've got obligations on like Final Fantasy and now ARC and whatnot. But there was a time when I did nothing actually but read books between my video game playing. To be honest, and I said this, we got some, oh, look at this. This is exactly why I wanted to come see this guy. Alright, but anyway, my favorite book, my absolute favorite book, is actually William Gibson's Neuromancer. Now, it's one of the books that spawned my love of cyberpunk, and the reason why I got into Shadowrun so hard, because I actually absolutely love Shadowrun, which I've talked about before. And that brings me to actually my next point, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to land on this guy and get some cool screenshots of this absolutely massive ringed star. But the reason that I'm bringing up Shadowrun is because when I was in high school and a couple years after, I played a lot of Vampire the Masquerade. Now, I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's not really as popular as it used to be, but I played a lot of it. It's a tabletop game, obviously about vampires, and what really drew me to it was the amazing way that they actually handled like vampiric stuff and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that, but it goes along with the whole reading a lot thing, because obviously it's a tabletop game, so there is a lot of reading involved, and creativity and crafting stories and whatnot, and it seems to do that a lot when I get into Glide. But I was always like made to be the storyteller. Now, if you don't play White Wolf games, you've only played like D&D and things like that, or almost any other tabletop RPG as well. The storyteller is the GM or the DM or whatever. So with my group of friends, I was always forced to become the storyteller because everybody wanted to play the game, and apparently I was pretty damn good at it. Now, cut to a few years later, especially like most of my group, and I talked about this when I talked about the whole prom thing and the sushi thing, is most of my group was a year behind me in high school. So when I graduated, everybody still had, everybody was seniors. And while I was at school, we actually played lots of tabletop games. We played Shadowrun at lunch. We played Vampire like after school and stuff like that. And we would all get together and have these super long gaming sessions. We played almost every White Wolf game. I really wasn't into like Changeling or Mage or Mummy or anything like that. I thought they were kind of boring. Well, we played a lot of Vampire. We played a lot of Werewolf. We played a lot of Wraith. As a matter of fact, Wraith was one of my favorite. And it was discontinued, which actually kind of bummed me out. And I'm trying to get a little further. I was hoping that I wouldn't drop out of Glide so fast because I wanted to get a little further down the horizon. Because I think if I land now, I won't be able to see that star. But I loved storytelling in Vampire so much that when I found the online community on the official White Wolf site, they had an online role-playing community there. And that's where I actually met my best friend, the singer in the band, John. And it didn't take very long for me in playing this to be voted in as the head storyteller. So for about a year and a half to almost 2 years, I was the head storyteller in the official White Wolf role-playing site for the Sabbat. Now, if you've never played Vampire the Masquerade, there are essentially factions of vampires in the Vampire Society or whatever, the Camarilla or Camarilla, whichever way you want to say it. We're quote-unquote the good guys. They're the guys that want to coexist with humans and, strengthen the vampiric race for the coming Gehenna, they called it, which was, and this only has 0.09 gravity, so we should be okay. Gehenna is like the apocalypse, Ragnarok, all that stuff, when the old vampires will come back and purge and blah, blah, blah. So the Camarilla, want to defend against that and build up society so that they'll be able to take these guys on when they come. And the Sabbat kind of have the same idea, but they take a more proactive stance where they get out. They don't care about humans. They think humans are only food. They don't give a shit about any of that. They don't hide themselves. And they actively seek out the older vampires to try and destroy them before they wake up and Gehenna ensues and whatever. The Sabbat was more of an action-oriented side, whereas the Camarilla was intrigue and political stuff and backstabbing and a slower pace. Well, people played at slower pace. I actually really liked the Camarilla, but all my friends played the Sabbat, so that's what I did. But the nature of playing the Sabbat meant that there was a lot of combat. There was a lot of death and, destruction and all this stuff. And I just think that for most vampire players, they wanted to play that way. So the Sabbat, appealed to them a little more, which always kind of bugged me. But when I got into this community with these guys, there were hundreds of people playing. When I got into the community, it just seemed like everybody was... the roleplay in general was kind of subpar, in my opinion. like everybody had their characters. They were attached to their characters. They didn't want anything bad to happen to their characters. So the storytellers at the time, the head storyteller and the assistant head storyteller, they catered to that. And, you know, they went easy on their players, and they didn't, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of death in the plots and stuff that they were going for. And, you know, everybody was able to, I don't know, I guess nowadays people would call it like care bearing or something, where, you know, everybody is, I am definitely not going to be able to see that star where I am because it is the lip of this thing. So we're going to keep going and hopefully at least get to the lip of this crater. So when I was voted in on the idea that I was going to make it more realistic and more true to the way the Sabbat should be played. So they voted me in, and I did not disappoint. So, like I said, a lot of people were super attached to their characters, and they didn't want anything bad to happen to them, and they wouldn't, like, anytime somebody would get upset that their character was dying in what we called plots, which were nights that we were sanctioned to, you know, do stories and had real impact on the community and stuff like that. Anytime people played those and, like, kind of, you know, got into situations where their character might die, then the storytellers at the time would give them a pass and say, oh, well, you know, they didn't kill you, they just wounded you, and blah, blah, blah. And that's, you know, don't get me wrong, that's a good storytelling tactic, but not when it happens all the time. If there's no fear of death, then you're playing the Sabbat wrong. Let's just put it that way. So when I came in, I warned people during my campaign for this position. And hold on one second, we're going to go into screenshot mode here. I warned people that I was going to play this about the way they were supposed to be played. So there was a lot of death. Now, during my reign of head storyteller for the Sabbat on the official White Wolf role-playing site, I killed more characters than every other storyteller combined before me. And a lot of people kind of got upset sometimes. It drove some players away, but it also brought in a lot of new players. People who heard about this, heard about how it was being played the way it was supposed to be played. We had, like, kind of a no tolerance attitude toward it. And John was voted in as my assistant storyteller, and that's how we got to know each other and became really good friends, because he liked the way that I was running things. We had several plots where the characters, the NPCs that we put in them were so memorable and so terrifying and scary that people still remember them to this day when we talk about it. I remember a pack that John came up with. I think I don't remember exactly what they were called, but they were like, they all wore like these old tarnished crimson armor, and they hung out in the sewers and blah, blah, blah. But they were threatening the city, and the characters had to go down there and root them out. And I played in because this was his story, his brainchild that he came up with, and he just wanted me to play one of these characters because he knew my play style. He gave me a character who was a Semitic by the name of Decay. Now, that's kind of on the nose because the Semitic all look like zombies, is like voodoo stuff, and, you know, they're all rotting flesh and whatnot. But his name was Decay, and he carried a giant, like, claymore. And so it got to the point where so many times in these plots, the way Decay would work was that he had, if you're not familiar with Vampire, then I guess I'll explain these things. But if you are familiar with Vampire, don't worry. I'm not patronizing you or anything. I'm just telling you, for people that don't know, there was a skill called Obfuscate, which basically you were able to kind of become invisible. It worked with altering perceptions and stuff like that. But so he was fast, and he could become invisible, and the like signature ability of the Semitic were that they could, like, collapse into a pile of ash. Now, when a vampire dies, depending on how old they are, they actually collapse into a pile of ash. Like, you've seen it in movies where old vampires are staked or whatever, and they just kind of disintegrate. That's kind of the same premise. So the Semitic could do that at will, and as long as they weren't scattered, they could reform at any time. So the most memorable thing that I remember were that these people were walking through a very tight corridor. It was single file, and there were about 4 of them in the group. They were hunting this group. I forget what the pack was called, but there were several people. Decay wasn't the leader. He was just like one of the guys, but they were hunting this group. Now, I very clearly, in the description of the area that they were in, stated that they walked past, or they were walking past, a suit of tarnished red armor that looked like it had been discarded, and it was sitting in a pile of ash. Now, that it wasn't like a big giant pile that, you know. Regardless, I explained to them that it was sitting in a pile of ash. They thought nothing of it, which was obviously their mistake. And they continued on down this corridor that opened up to, maybe it was still kind of single file, but there was a little bit of room. They came up to like, I guess, an intersection. Well, after they got far enough away, Decay rose up. He reformed into his armor and rose up and blinked out of existence, because that's, you know, how Viscay works, kind of. And while moving toward them, anytime Decay was in his stalking mode, he would drag his sword along the ground, a lot like Pyramid Head in Silent Hill 2. It would make the same kind of metal on stone sound, and they could hear that behind them. But because of the way that the echoes were going through the cavern, or like the corridors and stuff, they didn't exactly know where he was. Like, he could have been behind him, he could have been in front of him. It was echoing all over the place. And they stopped. And the leader of this group, by the name of Tank, was actually a pretty powerful character. In the short time that he played, he was always, you know, being involved in stuff, and that's how you got experience in this. Is you were involved in plots and stuff, you get experience. The more you put into the community, the more you got out. So he actually was pretty damn powerful. Unfortunately, the player didn't necessarily know the ins and outs of combat, and that was my specialty. I was able many, many times to take very, very weak characters and destroy stronger characters because of my like intimate knowledge of tricks and, you know, methods in combat to overwhelm like characters that should have on paper been able to easily wipe the floor with them. And that was kind of the case here. So Decay was using the metal scraping sound to kind of disorient everyone and kind of unsettle them. You know, people don't know, they didn't know anything about this group. They didn't know what they were up against. And it literally like scared the hell out of a lot of these characters, the players in general as well, because they, you know, were worried about what was going to happen to their characters, because they knew John and I's reputation of killing characters. But our rewards were always a little bit higher. Like, if you managed to survive, you got a better reward. So it was kind of a risk reward situation. But anyway, they all stopped, and Tank was kind of being cocky and whatnot. So Decay, because he was fast, he had a skill called Celerity, or a discipline called Celerity, that allowed him to move several actions at once because he's so fast. And as long as nobody else had used, like, if somebody else used Celerity as well, then they would be locked in like I guess time kind of slows down for the person using Celerity while they move at normal speed. Everyone else slows down. But if somebody else had used it too, they'd be moving at the same amount of speed. But Decay used this without anybody knowing, so obviously he had the advantage. So he comes out of Obfuscate, zips across the corridor with his sword, and then immediately goes back into Obfuscate. Now, there were a lot of dice rolls involved in this. The rolling for this particular part of combat took maybe a half an hour, just because all the explanations and descriptions of what's going on, and attack rolls and soak rolls and all this stuff. But it ended with those 4 actions, because he had to come out of Obfuscate, zip across, attack, and go back in. And he literally took off this powerful character's head in one swipe because of the surprise, the lack of, I guess, knowledge of the combat system and how to defend against something like that. And so everybody was freaking out, and it kind of led to this legacy with Decay, where anytime these players were up against this group, anytime they heard that sound, it freaked them the hell out. They knew someone was about to die. And that's the kind of like storytelling that we were going for with our Sabbat stuff. And I'm not exactly sure why I'm telling you this, but I just, back then, playing these games online it was like a big part of my life. I spent almost as much time, I guess about as much time, possibly even more than I do making videos and scouring YouTube and stuff like that. So it was a really big part of my life for a really long time. And you know, if you're into tabletop role playing or vampire in general, maybe you'll find this interesting. But anyway, this server is about to go down, and I realized that most of this video was me just sitting here with this view talking, but I think it's a pretty cool view. In any case, maybe, you know, we got into a lot of crazy shenanigans in that game. I killed a lot of memorable characters that, you know, when I talked to the players this day, and this was back in 2001. So this was a really long time, and we still talk about it. We have a Facebook group dedicated to it that we all talk about. John and I actually tried to revive the game a while back, and it was doing very well, but John had just gotten a PS4 or a PS3 and Call of Duty 4, and that was when I got him into, you know, FPS gaming and stuff, and we kind of let it fall to the wayside based on, you know, gaming together and stuff. So it didn't quite pan out, but it was fun while it lasted. In any case, that was just a crazy, you know, a little anecdote from back in the day from RC. But if I mean, technically that really isn't all the time I've got, but that's all the time that the server is letting me have. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to see more videos of Elite Dangerous or any of the other videos that I've done, go and hit that subscribe button. If you have anything to say, throw it down in the comments. I've actually been thinking about, with my roommate, who is another one of the people, one of my best friends, who I actually met through this game as well. We've been thinking about maybe, you know, firing up a game, maybe a weekly game, and I was thinking maybe recording it, throw it on YouTube. So maybe if you guys think that would be a cool idea, let me know. Maybe we can set it up and see what's going on, because we have a bunch of friends that actually like to play that haven't played in a really long time and would probably love to. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Remember, my name is Commander RestlessCorpse. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Eject, 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 eject.